Critics of Tupac, or people who don't know much about the man, often dismiss him as nothing more than a thug. And I mean, part of me can understand why. After all, he did have the words "Thug Life" tattooed across his stomach in 3-inch high letters. People hear Tupac's name and think of his violent lyrics, the numerous arrests, the gunshots, and the jail time, and probably conclude that Tupac was just a brash, loud-mouthed, aggressive brute. And don't get me wrong, he could be all of those things, depending on which mood you caught him in. But I don't think Tupac gets enough credit for how well read and aware of history he was. It's well known, to the fans at least, that Tupac spent time at a school of performing arts, at which he studied, among other things, Shakespeare and ballet. And years before that, as a punishment for misbehaving, his mother Afeni would force the young Tupac to read the New York Times from front to back. And Afeni's history as a member of the revolutionary Black Panther Party would rub off on Tupac as she told him stories about the struggle and the key characters that took part in it. I'm not going to get into these facts in this video, but suffice to say, in Tupac's formative years, he was exposed to a lot of reading, history, and cultural enrichment. In this video, I'm going to discuss a few glimpses that we get of Tupac's awareness of history and knowledge of literature, which not even the fans may be aware of. They come from several interviews he gave in 1996, the final year of his life, and in my opinion provide evidence of how bright he was and that he wasn't simply just some hot-headed, gun-toting thug, not all of the time at least. In this first clip, Tupac addresses his decision not to quit the music industry after he was shot the first time in 1994. He was spurred on to make this choice after hearing what he perceived as Biggie, Puffy, and the Bad Boy Records camp lying and twisting the facts about what happened the night he was shot. Tupac says,
I worked hard all my life as far as this music business to make it East Coast, West Coast love and make everybody feel comfortable. And I dreamed of the days when I can go to New York and be comfortable and they can come out here and be comfortable. So it's not like when people say, why are you doing it so silly? It's not like it's not silly at all. But you can't disrespect the love. You can't disrespect the peace treaty. That's just like when the Indians made deals with the white dudes and they would just come and rape their women and shoot them up and then leave. No, the Indians ain't gonna love white people no more. They're gonna want to kick up some dust until we think about it and renegotiate the terms of the treaty, and that's what I'm talking about.
In this clip, Tupac suggests that he feels betrayed and mistreated, and this is the reason why he is now attacking his former friends. To make his point, he uses the analogy of the Indians, or Native Americans, being betrayed and abused by the white settlers and the US government. Tupac is alluding to an almost 100-year period between 1778 and 1871, where the United States signed 368 treaties with various Native American tribes across North America. The treaties were supposed to preserve the independence and self-rule of the tribes. However, as white settlers began to occupy more and more Native American lands, many of the treaties were either violated or broken entirely. For example, the Treaty of Hopewell, 1785-86, saw the US government promise friendship and protection to the southern Native American tribes, while in the meantime white settlers were already moving onto the land supposedly meant for the Cherokee people. This led to conflict and the signing of the Treaty of Holston in 1791, which saw the Cherokee become even worse off when they lost even more of their land. Or the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868 was supposed to recognise the Black Hills of Dakota as the Great Sioux Reservation, which was supposed to be the exclusive territory of the Sioux and also the Arapaho people. That was until gold was discovered in the Black Hills, when white miners and settlers began moving onto the land in droves. The Native American resistance to the violation of this treaty actually led to the famous Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876. Despite the battle being a decisive victory for the Native Americans, in the aftermath the US government flooded the Black Hills region with troops, with nearly all of the Sioux people confined to reservations only 5 years later. In addition to betrayals like these, sadly sexual abuse and rape of Native American women was used as a way for the US soldiers to create fear amongst the native people and assert their dominance over a race that they perceived to be inferior. Often, the Native American men who tried to defend the women were slaughtered. This sad chapter of US history is what Tupac refers to in this clip, and although it may be an exaggeration to compare it with the grievance he had with Bad Boy Records at the time, it does demonstrate Tupac's appreciation of Native American history. Next, I'm going to talk about the many references Tupac makes in this phase of his life to army rankings and the military, which was no doubt influenced by the books he was reading at this time. Tupac uses army rankings to make sense of his position in relation to other people. For example, when discussing the early days of his and Biggie's relationship, when Tupac saw Biggie as something of a protege to him, Tupac says that Biggie used to be under him like his lieutenant.
Niggas is just gonna act like I'm gonna just be in jail and they gonna give me shout outs and try to take my position. And if you watch, that's what Biggie did. Listen to his, I was there, nigga, I trained the nigga, he used to be under me like my lieutenant. The nigga.
For those not familiar with army rankings, a lieutenant is lower down the ranking than, say, a captain or a general, the latter two being ranks that Tupac used to describe the position he perceived himself to be in.
So that's why I attack as though I do, because I'm a general and I'm a smart general, and I'm not gonna attack at no blind soldiers. I'm gonna attack at those attacking me.
Tupac said that during his time serving a prison sentence in 1995, he read, among other books, The Art of War by Sun Tzu and The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. Sun Tzu was an ancient Chinese military general, strategist and philosopher, and The Art of War is a book of military strategy that has influenced both Western and East Asian military theory and philosophy, and has even been applied in other areas including politics, business, culture and sports. Tupac's other influence, Niccolo Machiavelli, was a 15th century Italian diplomat, philosopher and historian. The Prince is a political treatise which serves as an instructional guide for new princes and other royals. The work suggests that in order for a prince to survive and prosper, the use of immoral means may be justified. Tupac took the pseudonym Machiavelli for some of the music he recorded while on Death Row Records, a phonetic spelling of Machiavelli, and a clear indication of how influenced he was by the Prince. But apart from this, and getting Machiavelli tattooed on the right side of his neck, there is not much to point to in Tupac's music in way of direct quotations or references from either the Prince or The Art of War for that matter. Instead, I think Tupac was influenced more generally by the themes of being analytical, cunning and strategic in both works, and tried to adopt these in his attitude and approach to his music career while on death row. In this interview, given less than 2 weeks before he was fatally shot, he mentions how reading and being strategic helped him become a force to be reckoned with as soon as he stepped out of jail.
Everybody talking about this West Side shit, right? People like Ice Cube started. I was in jail when Ice Cube was out. No, that wasn't no problem. The day I got out of jail, it was a motherfucking problem to be where the fuck you was from. The day I stepped out, that's power. I want these little niggas to see that. I didn't get that power from guns because there's no guns in jail. I got that power from books and from thinking and by strategizing. That's what I want little niggas to see.
In the very last tracks that Tupac recorded before he was murdered, military allusions crop up over and over, most notably in the unfinished One Nation project that was supposed to unify East and West coasts, with song titles including Military Minds, Brothers at Arms and Secrets of War, all of which are available in their original form on YouTube if you want to give them a listen. And in a Vibe interview Tupac recorded in May of 1996, he talked about the books he is reading. They include a biography of 20th century Russian dictator Stalin, as well as Tupac mentioning that he wants to read what the then US President Bill Clinton is reading.
All the time. I'm really into books. I'm into the part. Right now, I'm into Mastering the Art of War, The Art of War. I just found all these new books. Thoughts of a General, How to Win an Argument Every Time, The Buying of a President. What's that book I got? The Russian guy? Stalin. I got that. Christopher Darden book. You'll Never Work Again in Hollywood. Whatever that is, when they talking about people that slept together. I'm reading that. A lot of different things, but mostly shit on what built generals and what made countries and what I want to read what Clinton read, because he does the same shit I do, but don't, get in trouble. All
Tupac is clearly interested in the themes of political power and military might, and wanted to develop his understanding of the two by reading as much as he could. And this is not to mention the pseudonyms he gave members of his group, the Outlaws, which had the theme of military dictators or tyrants, including Castro, Gaddafi, Hussein, Idi Amin, Khomeini, Napoleon and Mussolini, but I'll discuss that in more detail in another video. In fact, having a military mindset had become a lifestyle for Tupac in 1996, as he hints at in this interview just 3 days before he was fatally shot.
Today, every young black male needs to be physically inclined and military minded. And this is part of the military mind. The soldiers are out there.
Although Tupac was still yet to flesh out what being military-minded meant to him, I think he was referring to becoming more disciplined with regards to physical fitness and more strategic in one's actions and how one manoeuvres in life and business. So here we get a glimpse into Tupac's reading habits and an understanding of how influenced he was by what he read, which we see evidence of in the song titles he chose, the pseudonym he picked for himself, and even what seemed to be evolving into a personal philosophy of sorts. It's clear that books played a very important part in Tupac's life, and I think that fact should be better understood. Last up is another clip that demonstrates Tupac's awareness of history, but I've saved it until last because it crosses the line into absurdity, and still shocks me when I hear it now. In this interview, Tupac is describing Biggie's rise to fame in the East Coast hip-hop scene in the early 90s, and, to make his point, Tupac quite outrageously compares Biggie to Hitler. You heard that right. Tupac actually compares Biggie to Adolf Hitler, leader of the Nazi Party and the main antagonist of World War II. Here's the clip.
Now, do you think the East Coast West Coast rivalry is like both coasts, or because a lot of people think it's more Bad Boy Death Row?
It is. It's not both coasts. What it is was that the East Coast, the people on the East Coast are real proud, real cultural, and real strong, just like we are on the West Coast. And so what happened was Biggie came at a time, just like what Hitler did with the Jews. Biggie came at a time when they were open to somebody saying, we're the master race, and these guys are nothing, and they're pretenders, and this is why we not making it in the business because of these guys. This is why we not doing nothing because of these guys. So the East Coast really not hating us, really not knowing nothing about us, but just listening to their supposed to be leader. Listening to the person that was representing for them. Like, yeah, okay, well, Biggie, he from Brooklyn, woo. You know what I mean? And that's what happened.
Here, Tupac is referring to Hitler and the Nazi Party's policy of persecuting Jewish people, who they claimed were inferior to blonde-haired, blue-eyed Germans known as the Aryan race. The Nazis blamed and scapegoated the Jews for Germany's pariah status on the global stage and the economic hardship they faced in the 1920s and 30s, including hyperinflation, which meant the price of essential, everyday items like a loaf of bread became astronomical. In reality, these problems had nothing to do with the Jewish people and more to do with the Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, and the crippling repayments it forced Germany to make to compensate for the destruction it stated the Germans had caused by starting World War I. Okay, Puck, we get that you were angry at Biggie for possibly knowing what happened the night you were shot and not telling you. And we get that you were angry about Biggie supposedly attempting to steal your rap style. But comparing him to the architect of the Holocaust and a dictator whose evil actions resulted in the deaths of millions upon millions of people is not just a bit of a stretch, it's breaking the goddamn elastic band. This clip demonstrates Tupac's knowledge of history, gives us an insight into how angry he was about the situation he found himself in at the time, and is also a great example of youthful exaggeration in the absurdity of some of the things we say, especially when young. I'm sure that had Tupac been able to grow older and mature a bit more, he himself would have understood how outrageous that comparison was as well. So there you have a brief glimpse at some of the historical facts and books that Tupac was aware of, and how they influenced his thought and his approach to life. I hope you found this video informative and entertaining, and perhaps you learned something new as well. Stay tuned for more Tupac analysis here on this channel.